Welcome to The Author Show, where we feature new authors and books, from fiction to self-help and everything in between. You'll find it all at theauthorshow.com. That's theauthorshow.com. And now let the show begin.
Hello and welcome back to the show. This is your host, Don McCauley. Today we're welcoming the program author Linda Maria Frank, and she is the author of The Mystery of the Lost Avenger. Linda, how are you?
I'm good, and thank you for inviting me, Don.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Okay, I'm a retired teacher, like many writers. I taught science, particularly forensic science, and when I was a kid, I loved Nancy Drew, so I decided that I would take some of the stories that I wrote for my students and turn them into mystery stories. I now also have my own TV show called The Writer's Dream, which is on YouTube. I plan events for authors, and I'm busy with writing my books and promoting them.
So tell us about this book.
Okay, The Mystery of the Lost Avenger is the fourth in Annie Tillery mystery series. Annie Tillery, of course, is my teenage sleuth. She's beginning to get past teen years, and I think that's going to open a lot of exciting doors for her. This story connects Annie Tillery to the past. The Mystery of the Lost Avenger. The Avenger is an airplane that was manufactured by Grumman Aviation during World War II on Long Island. This is really a Long Island story. Long Island is the cradle of aviation, and this is a mystery involving a plane that crashed in Appalachia in 1943, and the contents of the plane connected the plane to Annie's great-grandmother, who worked for Grumman. She was a test pilot for Grumman. So this is a mystery that Annie and her mother have to solve.
Now, who did you write your book for specifically?
I really target my books to school kids. Basically, it's, I would say, an advanced elementary school reader through junior high. And I like to be able to, because of my experiences teaching, I like to try to connect kids to history and to science, because science is very important in today's economy, in the whole picture of things today. And also, I think they like to hear stories about their ancestors, and certainly great-grandma is one of Annie's ancestors.
If you had to choose, what would you say is the single most important idea you're sharing in this book that's really going to add value to the reader's life?
I think the main theme is that girls can do anything, because the book really revolves around not only Annie's great-grandmother, but people like Rosie the Riveter, the women who built the planes, because the men were all off fighting the war. So the women had to build the war material. They tested the planes. They delivered them. And it's such a wonderful story about the strength of women. And I like to give this message to girls because I think girls need to have horizons open to them. So the overarching theme of the book is that girls are strong and they are capable, and they should broaden their horizons to include lots of different adventures.
If you could compare your book with any book out there we might already be familiar with, which book would it be and why?
Okay, I'm going to have to tell you none. And the reason why I'm saying none is because I have not found a book that combines history, mystery, forensic science, romance, and a page-turning thriller all in one book. Not for kids. So I really have not found anything like it.
Now, you really have two timelines going on here, the present and 1943. Why did you decide to do the story that way?
I did the time travel thing because I find the era, including World War II, to be a very exciting time in American history. It was also a very exciting time for women's history. This was a time when the men were off to war and the women had to take over their jobs, and they found that they could be very capable and could carry on the work of the country. It's also a very romantic time. I mean, there are so many stories about sweethearts going off to war, and I included that in the book. And I liked also to keep it in the present because Annie is working with her mother. She's also very much involved in something that Ty is involved. Ty just gets his pilot's license in this book. So there's a lot going on here, and it was really fun to go back and forth.
There must have been a great deal of research done for the book. Tell us about that.
The research was the most exciting part because We have a museum on Long Island called the Cradle of Aviation Museum because Long Island is the cradle of aviation, and I went into their archives, and their archives are something from another century in that nothing's on microfiche, nothing's on disk, computer, everything is in paper, and so you sit in this warm, dusty hangar going through piles and piles of paper, and I could get a lot of the same kinds of things off the internet, but it wasn't the same as being able to open the actual blueprints for the Avenger airplane and looking at them. So I began to feel that I was really there. And what inspired me to write this book was I went to the Cradle of Aviation Museum, came across an Avenger airplane in the museum, and there was a plaque there dedicated to the women who built it and tested it. And I climbed into the plane, sat in the cockpit, and I said, I just have to write the story of these women. And that's what led me to the research. And I spent a lot of time in those archives, and it really made me feel like I went back in time. It was very exciting.
Describe the character of Charlotte Wheeler.
All right, Charlotte Wheeler is Annie's great-grandmother, and she is a brave, beautiful, and tragic figure. She's brave because she discovers a sabotage plot in the plant, and she and her friends endeavor to stop the saboteurs, and she actually incurs some physical violence upon herself doing this. Tragic because she has a fiancé who is killed in the war.
Where did you get the idea of using a code to crack her secret?
I took Latin for 3 years in high school, and I thought I must make use of it some way. So I pulled out my Latin textbook and played with it, and that's how I got the code.
Do you have a particular interest in World War II?
Yeah, absolutely, because I am of an age that my earliest memories are World War II. I remember the ration books, and I remember the air raid drills, and I remember the newspaper clippings. I remember the day the war ended, and it was such an incredibly patriotic time that it really captured my imagination well into my teen years.
Now, Tyler Egan, Annie's boyfriend, gets his pilot license. Why is that an important part of the story?
Because he takes Annie on a number of flights, and it's a lovely romantic setting for them, but also Annie gets to learn a lot about airplanes with Ty, and that becomes essential in unraveling the secret of this crashed Avenger.
So who are the flying ladies?
The flying ladies are the Women's Air Service pilots, and they're called WASPs, and these are women who, as I said, flew the planes, tested the planes. Once they came off the assembly line, I mean, hundreds of planes came off the assembly line at one time, and they had to be tested. And they also flew them to the West Coast where they were put on the aircraft carriers where they fought the war in the Pacific.
Why do you think the history angle of this story is appealing to young readers?
Because I think with all of the present endeavors into ancestors like Ancestry.com and DNA, I think people, including kids, have become very, very much interested in their own ancestry and their own ancestors. And there's nothing like a good story about your grandmother or your great aunt. I think kids are very interested in that.
What can you tell us about this genre and why you prefer to write in this genre?
I like to write for kids because I think that there's a new generation of kids coming up all the time. So the story becomes refreshed every time a new generation comes up. And I've experienced that. Now that I have 4 books, I call them my recidivists. And these are kids who come back to buy the next book. And they keep asking me about the next book. I can't write fast enough. And I like to write for kids.
How would you describe your writing style?
Page turning. I like to write in such a way that you have to read my book a second time because you're so busy turning the pages to find out what's going to happen that you miss some of the details, and you want to go back and you want to revisit some of the history stories and some of the forensic science that I use to solve the crime.
So based on your experience as a writer, what's the one recommendation you would make to authors just starting out?
I would say do your research. Make sure that no matter what your story is, that you do research, because research really can lead you to find very interesting ideas for your book. It might turn you in a little different direction, but the research, I think, is key. And also, I think that authors need to read everything they can get their hands on so that they can see what the different styles of writing are. You learn from every author you read.
Now, are your characters pure fiction, or do you draw from people you know in real life?
My characters are generally Some of them are actual real people. Some of them are a composite of students I've had. Some of them I make up completely out of my head. And Annie herself is the teenager I would have loved to have been. So that's where they come from.
In your opinion, who should buy your book?
My book is really geared to, as I said, elementary school to junior high, but I have to tell you that women my age, older women who like Nancy Drew when they were kids, absolutely love my book. I had one woman tell me that she stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning to finish one of them. So if you like a good mystery and a book that's not 1,000 pages long, mine are a good buy.
Do you have a website?
I do. My website is my name, lindamariafrank.com. I have a Facebook page. It's called The Official Fans of the Madonna Ghost, and I have another page called The Writer's Dream.
Well, this has been just great. Our guest today has been Linda Maria Frank, and she is the author of The Mystery of the Lost Avenger. Linda, thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
This is Don McCauley wrapping up another edition of The Author Show. Please share this interview with your family and friends so that they too may have the opportunity to discover our guest and her work. And why not spread the word on social media? We look forward to you joining us next time for another great book and another great author on The Author Show.
Thanks for listening to The Author Show. Find out more about authors and their work at theauthorshow.com. Theauthorshow.com. Tune in next time to another great author on The Author Show.